Sound check, 1, 2. Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you live from beautiful Victoria here on the west coast of Canada. Just had to fix the microphone there this morning, but no worries, we're getting going now with IELTS Writing Task 2, authoring a Band 9 essay. Welcome, Atharwa. Hi, Jyoti, Sami, Jainil, Andri, and Patel. Good to see many students and members in this class. Hi, Rashika. This lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS success. Please check us out there for the general IELTS. Visit us at gieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. On both of those websites, we have loads and loads of materials to help you improve for your next IELTS exam, June. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay and see me okay. If you have any difficulties, let me know. Again, I'll show you these websites. This is our academic IELTS website here at aehelp.com. You just click that big red button to join our premium package. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. And for the general IELTS, it's the same concept, green background. You click that big red button to join us there. We are an official British Council IELTS Test Registration Center and certified agents. So you are in good hands with us, and you will find help for writing, editing services, as well as for the speaking, listening, and reading on these websites. Again, students, exciting news. My IELTS Band 9 journey comes to episode 4 this Sunday. My IELTS test results. You get to see what I got on my IELTS exam. And I have a little discussion about the scores and give some feedback of why I think I got those scores. If you would like to use our apps, download Academic IELTS Help from Google Play, Apple App Store, or General IELTS Help. These link to our website. So General IELTS Help links to gieltshelp.com, and Academic IELTS Help links to your aehelp.com account, so you're learning from the same student account. You can follow us on Instagram, IELTS_aehelp, or gielts help as well. And you can ask me questions by email, adrian@aehelp.com. All right, so we've got loads of lessons still this week. Right now, we have task 2 starting for members. Then shortly thereafter, in 90 minutes, we will have listening part 1 and part 2 for everyone. Welcome back, Mohit. Now, let's get to this IELTS task 2 writing question. This question was again sent to us by June. June said that this was the actual IELTS Task 2 question in Australia for some test centers not so long ago. And June was specifically interested in writing responses for questions that focus on governments. So there seems to be this tendency of Task 2 questions in the academic IELTS, but I've also seen them in the general IELTS where they focus on the government and the role of the government for certain social issues or contexts. So it's a good idea to have clarity on these types of questions. We covered this type of question last week or the week before, I believe. And so we're covering a little bit of a different government type question this week. So first things first, let's take a careful look at the question itself. Let's read it carefully, and then we'll paraphrase it. Paraphrase it means to write it down in your own words so that you make sure you understand it and you gather some useful vocabulary. So let's read this first, okay? Ielts Task 2 writing. You should spend about 40 minutes on this task. Some people think that governments should give financial support to creative artists such as painters and musicians. Others believe that artists should be funded by alternative sources. Discuss both views and give your own opinion. Write at least 250 words. Okay, fantastic. So let's paraphrase this. Let's write this question or rewrite this question using our own vocabulary. I'm going to do this. You do the same, members, and then we'll compare. Okay? So here we go. All right, so there's my paraphrase. You don't need to take too long on this. It doesn't have to be a perfect paraphrase, meaning you don't have to replace every single word. Good paraphrasing starts at around 70% word replacement. So as long as you can replace about 70% of the words from the original question in your paraphrasing, then you're on the right track, okay? So here is my paraphrasing, and this is what I wrote. So certain individuals think that national authorities ought to give monetary assistance to fine arts for painters and musicians. Opponents assert that artists should be financially supported by different contributors than the government. Discuss each of these perspectives and include your own. All right? So here we have the original. Here we have the paraphrase. I'm not just paraphrasing single words. I'm also paraphrasing phrases. So some people think, certain individuals think, okay, that governments should give, that national authorities ought to give, okay, financial support, monetary assistance to fine arts for painters and musicians. Opponents assert that artists should be financially supported by different contributors than the government. Okay. So that is my paraphrase. You want to do this very quickly. You should not take too much time on this. This is not your introductory paragraph. Although this vocabulary and these phrases can become parts of your essay, this is not your essay, okay? A high band level task to response is much more than just a paraphrase of the question for the introduction. Hi, Just Paul. Welcome back. All right. Nick Hill states certain individuals ascertain that national authorities ought to be financing creative painters and musicians. Opponents, however, think that they should be supported by other organizations. I like it. Nick Hill, especially the second part of what you wrote, I think is really nice paraphrasing. Opponents, however, think that they should be supported by other organizations. State both sides and give your opinion. Very good. Okay. Bakrat, welcome back. All right. June writes, certain individuals believe that authorities ought to provide funds to innovative artists, including painters and musicians, while some other people think that artists should obtain support from different sectors instead of taxpayers' money. Okay, Rashika says certain individuals feel that authorities should give wages to creative artists, such as painters. Others ascertain that organizations should give money for creative musicians instead of the government. Okay, Rashika, that's good too. So very nice. We have some good variability in your paraphrasing. And so far, all of those are quite good. You include all of the content and you have clarity. Okay, Sammy writes, certain individuals believe that authorities must provide economic support to innovative artists as painters and musicians. Others think that artists must be supported by some other channels. Discuss both notions and provide an opinion. Yeah, it's very, very important here to see that here we want to discuss both views and give your own opinion. Okay, so now we want to identify the topic and the controlling idea, or the controlling ideas in this case. What is the topic? And nice and fast here, members. So again, once you practice this at home, this should not be taking much of your time. You should use your time for writing. Your planning should only take about 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes, okay? So your time allocation should be 3 minutes planning, about, let's say, 32 minutes writing, and about 5 minutes reviewing. Okay, so that should be roughly your time allocation for task 2. Now, of course, we're going to take much longer planning because we're doing a lot of back and forth dialogue. But again, practicing at home, this should be pretty fast. Okay. All right, so topic. Nick Hill says financial support for creative artists. Mohit says financial support for innovative artists. Yeah, absolutely. I think all of you are giving that answer. So I agree. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about here. If somebody says, what are you discussing? The answer should be financial support for artists. Okay. Or even more specifically, source, but that's kind of included in this. So financial support for artists, right? Or the source of financial support. But that's in here. So the source of financial support for artists. You want to keep that concise. Yeah. All right. And what is the controlling idea, or what are the controlling ideas? Okay, so Rashika says, I believe Rashika is already answering that question. So Rashika states responsibility of paying artists, is it the government's or is it private? Yeah, so that's the controlling idea. So this financial support, is it from the government or is it from private sector? Okay, Mohit says whether fund assistance should be given by national authorities or other sources. Yeah, exactly. So basically public or private, right? Okay, So again, when you practice this and you're thinking and you're planning, you can come up with more and more accurate answers and vocabulary. So the responsibility of funding from public and or private sources for artists, okay? Public would be government, so that's where the public gives taxes, because the government is public support, right? It's the communal support of the taxpayers' money. And then private sector is the corporations, the businesses, the individuals who decide that they want to support the arts industry, musicians and painters. Okay, so now, of course, at home, what you want to do is critical thinking about the topic and the controlling idea. Okay, asking what, why, and how. And you want to really ask the right questions. Okay, so what would be the first question? What should you ask for the first question here? I think it's quite clear. I usually just ask the questions in these classes, but I want you to focus a little bit more on the questions this time. I will focus on the answers this time. We can do both, and then we'll see if we agree. So what is the first question? Jainil, I also see your controlling idea. Jainil says, is it a responsibility of the government or the private sector? Jainil, for the topic and the controlling idea, really work hard to show those as a statement rather than a question. So stating the controlling idea and stating the topic works better in the thinking and planning than if you're using a question. It seems like a small difference, but it is an important difference. Okay? Patel says, what does it mean by funding artists? I don't think that's the best question. Andre says, what is financial support for artists? Yeah, Andre, I agree. That would be the right question. So, okay, yeah. So keep it simple, right? Nick Hill, exactly the same. So what is financial support for artists? Okay, so if you ask me, and you can answer these as well, we might not have the same answers. I don't think I have the best answers for all of these questions, so I'm open to suggestion. So what is financial support for artists? Okay. All right. So that's what I would answer. I wonder if you came up with something similar. So when I visualize this, okay, so when I see a painter or a musician and I think about, well, okay, what is financial support for this musician or this painter? I have a couple of friends who are artists, so I'm thinking about them right now. Like I'm thinking of my friend Justin, who is a painter, and I think about, okay, well, what is financial support for Justin? It means that he's getting enough money to pay for his house, his clothing, his food, and at the same time also enough money to pursue his art. So his art supplies his ability to go and display his artworks in galleries. Okay. So Andre says it means money given to artists to create art in the future. Yeah, okay, so Andre, I agree with you. That's half of my answer. The other half of my answer is to also support their living expense so that they can concentrate on their art, okay? Okay, so Patel says giving money for their creative efforts and expenses. Yeah, Patel, I think that's a nice way to say it as well. Okay, Rashika says allocating payment, monthly payments for artists. Yeah, Rashika, that's good. So Rashika says like monthly payments or regular payments, just like a salary. Okay, and I agree that it's important for it to be regular. So that's the quantitative part of it, Rashika. I might even save that for the how question. So what's the next question here? Okay, so what would be the next question? Give me the next question. So what is funding for artists? What's the next question? Mohit, I'm reading yours right now as well. I think you should rethink that because I think you're answering a different question. A very, very important skill in essay writing, as the same in project management, is to have really clear separation of questions and answers and accuracy. Yeah, okay, Bakrat, very good. So Bakrat says, why is it necessary to fund artists? Okay, Andre says, why artists need money? Andre, I don't think that's the right question. I think Bakrat has a better question. Why is it necessary to fund artists? Not why do they need money? It might seem, Andre, that it's the same question, but it's not quite the same question. You could ask that for any person, right? So why do people need money, right? But instead here, it's why do artists need to be funded? So it means that why does somebody else need to give money for artists, okay? So yeah, so it's a little bit more passive. It's a little bit more indirect, right? So why is it important to fund artists? Okay, and now we want to give an answer to this. Okay, so this is my answer here. Let's see if you kind of come up with something similar, okay? So here, I would say it is necessary to give financial assistance to musicians and painters so that they can focus on expressing their talents rather than worrying about making money for their sustenance needs, right? So here I'm visualizing, and again, I'm picturing people that I know, what I've heard from society, that if you have an artist and that artist has to go to, let's say, McDonald's and work for 10 hours a day so that they have money for food and home, then that takes away time from their art. So they're able to dedicate less time to practicing their music or practicing their painting and expressing those thoughts and feelings. So they need financial assistance to give them an ability to focus on expressing their talents. And as I'm saying this and explaining this to you, I'm even thinking in more detail to focus their time and energy on expressing. So even more specific. This is why it's good to verbalize. And when you're planning essays, if you're in an ESL class, if you're in an English class, an English literature class, then definitely work in partners and in groups on planning so that you can reflect on each other's thinking, just like what we're doing right now. Okay. Mohit says to assist them in their respective field, which prompts them to work with more focus and concentration towards their art forms instead of thinking about their financial situation. Mohit, that's good. It's a little bit wordy. June says to help artists be fully engaged in creating art without struggling for survival or for leading their lives. Yeah, absolutely, June. Nick Hill says musicians and painters do not have to worry about money. Instead, they can make creative art in a short time with less energy. Yeah, very good. All right. Now, the next question is what? So, what's the next question? Okay. And again, it's simply what, why, how, but you have to ask the right specific question in your planning. And you're practicing this at home regularly before your IELTS exam so that when you get to the exam, you can do this nice and fast. And you don't have to write it down in the official exam. You just do it in your mind. You might make some notes. So you do have a piece of paper there for the writing section. And you might make some notes for it, okay? But you don't write all of these down. So while you think about the next question, I'm going to give you this tip as well. Okay, so okay, so yeah, for the planning, you don't have enough time to write it all down, but you might write down some key points. Like I would probably write down time and energy to express talents. Okay, so I might write down something like that. All right, so Janelle says, how can artists receive financial support? Good. So how can artists receive financial support? Good. Okay. So I'm going to answer this, and let's see if you come up with the same. So good. All right. We're on the right track here. So all right, so here are some ideas that come to mind for me. Again, visualizing this, they can get a monthly allowance or a salary, like for example, $2,000 per month to cover their living expenses. They can get scholarships, grants, bursaries to cover their exhibition and supplies costs. For instance, okay. That's what comes to mind for me, but again, there could be other ways, certainly. All right. Rajveer says, your answers are so simple, and I try to make them as complex as possible. Yeah, Rajveer, simple is beautiful, right? So don't overcomplicate, absolutely. June says they can receive extra funding from scholarships from private companies. Yeah, I haven't actually said from where. So it could be from either from private or public investment. Could be from both, right? We haven't specified that. All right. Okay, good. So now we come to the controlling idea. And for the controlling idea, we basically do the same as for the topic. So we ask what, why, how. And here we have the two different perspectives. So we have public funding, the government, and we have the private funding, the individual. So we could ask what, why, how, and that could really take a long time. So there is kind of a trick, if you will, to make this a little bit faster, right? So here is an important trick, okay? And instead of putting it here, I'm actually going to put this back at the top here. Okay, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of very smart people working in government. Society has been evolving for a long time. So one quick way to figure out your answer of what you should choose, one side or the other side or both sides, right? This is always the big question. So should I choose one side or both sides? Okay. All right, there's an easy answer to this, okay? And the easy answer is, well, think about how society really does this, okay? Now, this won't always work. I mean, in some situations, society isn't doing a good job, like, for example, saving the environment. We could be doing a much better job, but certain things are functional in society, and we really do not need to reinvent the wheel. Does everybody know this idiom? So you do not need to reinvent the wheel. Okay. This idiom basically means don't think hard on an idea that already exists, okay? And this question, this task 2 today is a perfect example of this, okay? So let me put this question to you clearly then, members. In the real world, are artists supported by the government? Are they supported by individual investors, or are they supported by both? Okay. So when you think about it, when you think about your country, your society, and this, I think, generally tends to be true in most societies, most nations around the world, are musicians, are artists supported by the government alone? Or are they supported by individual investors alone? Or are they supported by both? Okay. So Rajveer says they are supported by individuals. I'm not sure, Rajveer. Let's see if everybody else agrees with you. June says both. Bharat says, I think both exists in functional societies. Nick Hill says, I guess both. Yeah, absolutely. So in most societies, to a greater or lesser extent, we do see funding and support for artists by both the government and individual organizations, okay? Definitely. When you think about big concerts or you think of art schools, you see individual investments, and then you see, and also supported by the government of, or by the national government of, or by the province of, or by the state of, okay? So it's both, okay? So okay, so both of them support the arts. All right, so let's get down here then. Okay, and ask the next question. So here, if I'm visualizing and I don't reinvent the wheel, then for the controlling idea, I really quickly realize that, okay, by visualizing and thinking about the real world, I realize that both governments and private investors support painters and musicians. Okay. All right. So what would be the next question here? All right. So what would be the next question here? And this is an important one. All right. As we're coming into the right answer. Students, the reason why we spend a full class on the planning and getting the thesis for the introduction, I never really digressed into explaining this, and then we spend one class on writing the essay, is because if you have good thinking, good planning, then you'll have a good essay. If you don't have good planning, it's very, very difficult to write a good essay. And on the Ielts, to get a band 7 or higher, you really have to have good content. Your essay has to have good information. You can't just write any old idea. If you do that, you'll get a band 6 or a 6.5. So what is the next question here? Okay. And this is a little bit of a tougher question. All right. So give me a good question here. Okay. What's the right question here? So Patel Viral says, why is it important for governments to fund artists? Yes. I would actually go a little bit further here. So think about, okay, that we visualize that both in the real world, both governments and individuals support painters and musicians. Yeah, Janelle, I love it. So Janelle has the right question. Janelle says, why is it important that both governments and private sectors support artists? So yeah. And even take out the word important, Janelle. So why is it that both governments and private sectors support artists, such as painters and musicians? Okay, I think that's the very valid question. What do you think? So what's the answer to this? Why is it that both governments and private sectors support artists such as painters and musicians? And again, visualize the world around you. So, for example, and this is true, I live in Victoria, and not far from my house, about 4 blocks from my house, there's a baseball stadium. And that baseball stadium on the outside has a big wall. And just recently, that wall got painted by local artists. It got a new mural. It's called a mural. A mural is a big painting on a wall. Okay, it's a mural painting. A mural painting is something that is on a wall on the side of a building, for example. Now, this mural was funded, I'm sure, by the government. I'm not sure if any private sector was involved, but definitely the government was involved. There was a sign there that says this mural is sponsored by the government of British Columbia. And there were 3-4 different artists that were working on this mural on the side of the stadium, right? So there's a reason why the government funded these artists, right? And you can probably think about that, right? And this is a fact. So think about the real world around you. So the government supports these artists as well as the private sector. Why? there is a logical answer to this. Okay, why do both of these entities, if you will, support artists? Okay, I'm going to give my answer. Let's see if you come up with something similar. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say. All right. So Harvinder Shran, very nice, Harvinder. Finally, you've entered the chat, and you really stated the answer in a very concise way. But I like it. Harvinder literally says, in a very simple way, for publicity. Okay. And it's a beautifully concise way to state exactly what I wrote here. So the reason artists are financially aided by both entities, governments and individuals, is that they both benefit from the art. So you have organizations that have artists and musicians working for them to promote their products, to promote their organizations. And the government itself is an organization, and of course it promotes itself and creates the culture of the society that's persistent, the history. Okay, so history depends on the art of the society. So governments benefit from having artists and musicians, and private organizations benefit from having artists and musicians. So it's in both of their interests to support the arts and music, right? All right. All right, so Anita says, yes, in Italy there are support for artists. For example, my son attends a course of spray art, and the fund comes from a private organization. Yeah. So, June, very good. Artists' contributions benefit both the society as well as private corporations. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Very nice. So now we can think of the how. So how do artists benefit both governments and society? Okay. So we could say for governments or society, art creates culture and history, public awareness, okay? And for corporations or individuals, creates brand awareness and profits, right? So that's how art becomes an intricate part of both of these entities. Okay, so now we can come up with our thesis statement, okay? So at this point, you should be able to come up with a brilliant thesis statement that can get you a Band 9 Ielts essay. Okay. Let's go back to the original question. So the original task 2 question, and let's use all of this information that we've generated in the class to come up with a great thesis statement. So Ielts task 2 writing. You should spend about 40 minutes on this task. Some people think that governments should give financial support to creative artists such as painters and musicians. Others believe that artists should be funded by alternative sources. Discuss both views and give your own opinion. Okay, so there's the question. Now you have all of this information in your head, okay? And you have to write a thesis. Your thesis is the key part of your introductory paragraph. It usually comes as the last 1 or 2 sentences of your introduction, and it basically will tell your reader what your essay contains. So it will tell your reader what body paragraph 1 is, what body paragraph 2 is, if you have 3 body paragraphs, what that is, and it will specify your points for argument, okay? So let's do that right now. I'm going to write a thesis statement. You write a thesis statement based on all of this information, and then we'll compare. Again, you can do it as 1 sentence or maybe as 2 sentences, okay? Quite a bit of content when it says discuss both views and give your own opinion. You might end up with a 2-sentence thesis because there's just a lot of content there, okay? So And it's totally okay to write and rewrite and adjust your thesis until you feel that you have the perfect thesis statement. Okay, so don't just go with the first idea that you write down, right? All right. I'm going to stick with this for now, and then I'll develop it further, maybe adjust it a little bit as I write my introductory paragraph. I believe that both the government and private sector should support artists such as musicians and painters, as they both benefit, the former through culture and the latter through profit. Okay? So governments receive culture via the arts, and the private corporations or individuals profit financially or through other ways. Okay, profit isn't necessarily just money, but I can explain that more in my body paragraph. Okay, so I've kept it fairly simple here, and all I'm doing here is just giving my own perspective, because my perspective discusses both views. So it says discuss both views and give your own opinion. Well, here my opinion is discussing both views, so I don't really need to go into more complexity here. Okay, so I believe that both the government and private sector should support artists. Let's put a couple of commas in here for the additive clause, such as musicians and painters, as they both benefit, the former through culture and the latter through profit. Okay, so former meaning the government through culture, and the latter meaning private sector through profit. Okay, all right. Rajveer, The thesis statement is not just for Ielts. The thesis statement is a standard part of English literature for essay writing. So definitely you want to learn that, Rajveer, not just for Ielts, but you want to learn that for college, university, professional life as well, for writing documents. This is what a thesis statement looks like, okay? You can, Rajveer, learn a lot more about thesis statements on the websites as well in your full course, all right? Okay, Mohit, for the thesis statement, writes, financial assistance to artists should be given by national authorities as well as the private sectors, as taxpayers' assistance helps them to concentrate on their art, and private assistance helps them to gain publicity. Okay, Mohit, not a bad start. I think you have a good start. I think you need to work on being more concise. So making your thesis statement a little bit clearer, a little bit shorter, more to the point. But I think your start is correct, all right? Okay, Nick Hill says, in my opinion, authorities and private organizations ought to be supporting creative artists that benefit both governments by creating culture and private sector by promoting their products. Yeah, very good, Nick Hill. That works too. Okay, so you're kind of synonymous with me. Jainil says, I believe that both governments and private sectors should financially support skillful artists such as painters and musicians because both entities can improve reputation and profit. Yeah, Jainil, good. So Nick Hill, Jainil, kind of the same advice as for Mohit. You have a really good start. You just want to make it concise. So you don't need to change it a lot. You just need to change a little bit of the grammar, take out a couple words, and you can use mostly what you have written just in a shorter kind of way. Okay. June says, in my opinion, both governments and private companies are responsible to offer monetary support to artists. The former creates cultural bonds while the latter improves brand awareness. Yeah, okay, that works. Absolutely. Very good. All right, everyone, so that's the thesis, and now we can write the introduction. And the introduction is going to be for homework because we're out of time for this class. So the introductory paragraph, okay, as we know, has the hook, the background, and the thesis. Okay, and this is going to be homework for tomorrow's class. So tomorrow we will share our introductory paragraphs. This statement will come to the end of that introductory paragraph. We're going to have just a nice little quick hook and background beforehand. We'll review that at the start of class tomorrow. We'll review the introductory paragraph, and then we'll write body paragraph 1, 2, and the conclusion for a complete essay. So I'm going to finish this introductory paragraph a little bit later today. You do the same. It's good practice for your writing. If you don't know about the hook and the background, check your course on the website, okay, aehelp.com, glshelp.com. There's very clear explanations, or check out some of the other videos on the channel for that. And then we'll continue with the rest of the essay tomorrow. Body paragraph 1, topic, sentences, explanations, examples. That's it for me for today. Wonderful job. Great work in the chat today. Lots of fantastic responses and questions. Good job. And again, just one of the highlights from this class, okay? You do not need to reinvent the wheel, all right? So when you're deciding on how to discuss both sides and how you should give your own opinion, think about how it is in the real world, okay? If we really think about it, we know that in the real world, governments and private investors support arts. Okay, think about movies, think about paintings, music, and that's very, very true. Concerts and so on. All right. Okay, everyone. That's it for this class. But coming up in about 30 minutes, we will have listening practice, part 1 and 2 That's for everybody. Everybody will be able to join the chat. So come back in half hour, take a short break, go to the washroom, have a glass of water, eat a sandwich, and hopefully I will see you back here soon. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out from beautiful Victoria, and I'm back shortly. Bye for now.